Okay.
I'm keeping an eye on it.
Is that,
Okay.
So we're recording now. Yep. I
Yes,
got
it's
sound.
recording now.
all right.
All right.
Okay.
I won't hold you up because
No
I
worries.
can't tell you how thankful,
You can
seriously,
continue
just to get
going
it started on it.
For however long you
Okay,
guys
good.
want, and we can always just piece
Right.
them together.
Right.
Come on.
Well, you know, my mother also was responsible for the beginning of getting Venice Family Clinic to be on the corner of Sixth and Sixth and Rose, because it was before it was a pharmacy, right?
Okay.
So they would get together and say, what does the community need? Okay, they needed some kind of a medical support, because then you would have to go to Santa Monica at that time. So she advocated and then, organized the community, and bingo bango, there's Venice Family Clinic. She also had a collaborative effort with Venice Community Housing. They would, from the transitional housing, Venice Community Housing also had a transitional house, which is still there today.
Okay.
But, so she had a lot to do with organizing organizations and getting community participation. She was really good at that, because she would say, okay, we got to go down to the city hall. All right, I got a school bus out here. All right, everybody come out here. That if you're not going to get on that bus, don't come back down here for no food, right? Because I need you to help me help you. So she would get them all together, and they would get on the bus, and they would go down to the city hall and do the reporting to the meeting. And they're like, well, Vera, we don't want to say. She said, you don't have to say a thing. I'll do all the talking. All I need you to do is stand behind me for support. And people need to have someone that could speak like we were talking in a fashion that people can receive what you're saying. Because why would they listen to my mother? I don't know. You see, but she was admired by a lot of the elected officials, and that was able to help her keep funding. So sometimes you never know who is going to be the person in need. So you really have to be ready to be the voice for that person. Because usually people that are having financial issues, emotional issues, they don't really want to talk about it. So you tell somebody, and then they go and say, don't worry, that's the same issue. I could relate to that. I'll talk to them about it. Now, one thing I do talk. And I got that from her, because I don't care who you are. She said, I don't care who it is. Sometimes you'd have to return something to the store, and the clerk would say no, and then you go back home, and I said, Mom, they said they wouldn't take it. She said, did you ask for the manager? I said, no, who am I? She said, you just go right up there and ask for the manager. So I'd have to go back to the store and say, well, my mom said this meat isn't any good, and she says she wants her money back. And then I'd be trembling, and they'd be like, well, who's your mom? And I would say, Vera. Oh, Vera. Oh, sure, don't worry. We'll exchange it. Because they didn't want my mother coming up there raising hell with me. She said, because you'd be like, how could you sell this to people in our neighborhood, and this meat ain't no good? Get rid of all of that stuff.
Right.
And they would do it. That was the shocking part about my mother. Whatever she said, people would do it.
Well, I mean, it speaks to our having a voice that we don't always try to use, and we're not aware of the power of our voice, especially as collectives.
Yes.
Because if your mother was able to start all of those things, I'm curious, how did she get into that? Or did she ever tell you, like, what's her background that she decided once she was here, she had a couple of properties and wanted to do these things? What led to her wanting to do the women's sheltering or the community transitional for elderly? What was the...
Well, yeah. Well, my mother, when she was raised, her mother died at a young age. She was still an infant, per se. But her mother's aunt took my mother and then went looking for her other siblings. So my mother always had a deficit of not having family, I would say. Maybe that's why she had so many kids. But when she came to realize that, it was a struggle in California because, trying to go to AFDC and figure out all the paperwork and deal with the social workers, a lot of people were intimidated by that, so they wouldn't do it. So she came to organize the community first in Mar Vista Gardens housing projects, Then she went away to the Job Corps thing, and we kept saying, well, where is she? Because my older sister was running the house, and she would just, worse than my mother, actually telling everybody what to do and lock us outside. And then when she came back from there, she went to NAP, which was also another organization that was designed with a community block grant. And then from NAP, then she went into forming her organization, LUCAP, Low Income and Elderly United Community Action Program. Now, all this was before she had gotten the money for the property, right? So once she got the money, then she figured that she needed to secure a location for the shelter, and that's when she and Bob Yeller came up with the idea of buying the 641 Westminster. And I mean, it was a struggle for her because, she wasn't getting the funding to pay staff, qualified staff that could do something, that were innovative thinkers. Most of the staff just did whatever she told them to do, not really thinking that, well, maybe why I'm here, maybe I should go get my degree in sociology, or maybe I should go get my degree in psychology. She would encourage you, but if you didn't do it, then she would just say, okay, well, you'll be nothing.
You have an opportunity here to create a whole world for yourself, or you can just come to work.
And she would give you the support. Now, when I was growing up, I really wanted to go to law school. But my older sister was 2 years older than I was. My great aunt said, had christened her when she was young, laying hand on the elder, that she was going to be a nurse. So she graduated high school before I did, and my mother invested in her profession. And she would say, well, Mona, I would really love to be able to send you to law school, but I just can't afford it. So either you go find a job, or you go to Santa Monica College and get into business or something where you can earn a living. And I kind of, as you can tell, it still kind of sticks with me, but it's not to say that I couldn't have done it on my own. But that kind of like blew the wind out of my sail, you know what I'm saying? Because I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to law school, and I'm going to get into civil rights, and I'm going to be able to do something different. But at the end of the day, health is really important, and I'm glad that my sister went on to be a nurse, because she helped us through a lot of our own health issues growing up. So it's just like, sometimes as kids you don't see the reason why you don't get the things that you want to do, but as you keep living, you realize those are the foundations that give you the strength to persevere. Because if I would have went on to law school, who knows where I would have been now? I might be a drug addict somewhere. I might be a drunk from dealing with all this chaos and stuff. Who knows? But it's not to say that I'm dead. I can't do it. I could still go forward if I choose to. So I think I'm going to go back and go to law school.
I might go with you.
I know. Because right now I could sign my name to any financial papers. Who cares? By the time that comes to pay, I'll be dead.
A 30-year loan? I'll take it.
I know.
30-year loan? Absolutely.
Hey, Willie, I get 3 or 4 of those? Shoot. And that's why I tell kids, go to school. I don't care how much you got to sign the paper to get a loan. Just sign it. Because at the end of the day, they can't lock you up for owing. Just pay them $50, whatever the minute. Who cares if you pay for it the rest of your life? But at least you have something out of it. You know what I mean? So I tell everybody, if you go to school, just sign your name. If they give it to you, be like, thank you, Lord. And then now you can go on with it instead of just saying, no, I don't have the money to do it.
It's like the money's out there. The money's out there.
Well, the money's out there, but if you don't know how to go get it, and all these 1,001 people are signing for loans or whatever, loans you could get, right? But grants, that's a whole different story. Because to get a grant, you got to compete with maybe 1,000 people. So now there's no social interview anymore. It's all on, looking at what it looks like on paper. Yeah, well, this person might have all A's, but they ain't got a lick of common sense. So it's not a good investment. But I tell young people, don't let the money stop you, because one thing about money is not going anywhere, and all you're obligated to do is pay that minimum amount, and you might pay it for the rest of your life, but look what you got out of it. So sign your name.
And we That's
Just like I'm getting ready to sign mine at 68, they'll be like, excuse me, ma'am, you're too old. I'll be like, there's no age discrimination on this paper.
If you tell me I'm too old to sign this thing, I'm about to sue you and not sign nothing. You just don't let me in. How you want to play? You want to play? So I'll get to some of our wrap-up questions to go through the questionnaire. But again, it's not as much an interview as it is an opportunity for us to like siphon some of your own stories and ideas. Are there like any kind of particular periods in time that you remember in Venice being special, aside from obviously what was going on in the 80s? Just some positive or negative, but just, I won't say negative. Any sort of time that really stands out to you, or any kind of story or anecdotes or anything that you remember. You didn't go to the As Is with your sisters.
No, I didn't. But
So-
the only thing I really can say about Venice was when the Venice Family Clinic did the art walk, right? Now that brought in a lot of artists exposure, whether you were part of the walk or not, people were still walking around the community and felt comfortable doing so, which I found kind of amazing because people that lived there, they wasn't doing that, right? But it was an opportunity for me to get to know a lot of the artists in the neighborhood, as well as a lot of, business people, just from working from the Venice Family Clinic, that taught me how to organize and taught me how to do fundraising, you see. So if you were looking for a fundraiser, I can call, okay, all you could do is tell me no. It's either yes or no, and if you tell me no, okay, thank you. Well, can I call you back maybe in a couple of months, and you think there might be something available, and then you just move on to the next name on the line. But it taught me the fact that if you treat people and you have a good cause, people will support it. And then in Venice, when they, this is kind of off mark, but in Abbot Kinney, right, when they were doing this redevelopment thing for Abbot Kinney, all the business was like, yeah, we want this. They're going to give us money to fix up our places, and it's going to bring a lot more resources to the community. How many of them stores are there now? None.
Right.
When Hal's had to leave, that was gone. And then that Tantal Smith, she was the main one screaming, we need to be able to fix this street up. Now they should have left the street as it was. And, because it was hippie, it was down to earth, and then those places could have still been there. The Glencrest barbecue place, when that parent died, they sold. Them kids couldn't wait to sell that property, and I was trying to buy it, and they said, "No, we're not going to lose money now, Ramona. If I could get $500,000 for it, and you're only offering me $250, why would I do that? Because you want to keep it in the neighborhood, right?" The cooks could still work there. This is the fact of turning the hands over in the name into somebody else's name. And I don't understand people why they're not just willing to sign the right over if somebody has a good idea or somebody's willing to take on the sacrifice of making sure that it's passed on to the next generation. Because my teaching tells me that every generation is supposed to pass something down to the next generation to give them a start. Now, who in that next generation, who knows who that might be? But that might be the one child who's sitting there saying, you know what, instead of paying rent over here, let me come over here and I could be able to, collect some money, keep the building going, and then from there borrow money to send my kid to college or whatever. But people don't think that way. They think like, especially if you have siblings, well, I just want my money. Okay, well, you didn't put no money in it, so what money do you think you deserve to get out of it? And that's what my mother would say, if you didn't put nothing in there, and that's how I ended up over there at Indiana, because she told me, Mona, when you move over there, don't ever call me and ask me for no money. You work and you could, whatever needs to get done, you pay for. So I've sacrificed a lot. I could have said, I'm just going to go buy my own place and do something with it, but I just feel it's my duty to keep this property to pass down to the next generation, because that's what my mother had always told me to do. Now, it's not easy because people are looking for profit. What am I getting out of it? Well, excuse me, you ain't putting nothing into it. Now, if you put something into it and fix it up, whatever rent you collect, I don't care about the rent money. That's not, money is only going to be as good as you want it to be, right? What's the point of having a big money in the bank and and it's not doing anything with it? As long as I'm able to live off of my income, that what I have going now, that's really all I need. I don't need $1 million or this, that, and the other. But the problem with families is they don't sit down and discuss it with the children about what they're going to do with the assets they have. And now, my mother said, well, I don't want anyone to be mad at me. Well, they're going to be mad at me then, okay? She said, well, I don't care if they get mad at you, but, I don't want them mad at me because I don't want them to feel any way.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it was her responsibility to say, this is what I want to be done with these properties, instead of having it written on a dry piece of paper as a will.
Right.
But why can't we have those conversations without each person getting offended that they're entitled to something? You're not entitled to anything. You're barely entitled to breathe air and drink water. But when you figure you have that entitled mentality, you lose everything because you're not looking at the benefit for the next person. You're just looking at what you're going to get out of it. And nothing is easy. Everything requires a sacrifice. And that's the only thing that keeps me going, is that God is able to help me make the needs met that I need to have done. I'm not a millionaire. I don't have a big bank account. I don't have a lot of stuff going on. But what I do have, I'm holding on to it. And I don't care how anyone feels about it. It's my responsibility for the next generation. Now, what they do with it, as I say, that's up to them. But they sure can't say, oh, and I never got anything from Aunt Vera. My grandmother Vera Schiff. I don't even know anything about her. So I'm excited about this project because now the next generation can hear more stories about the commitment that people sacrificed for them to be able to even think that they deserve something. But a lot of black families in Venice lost their homes. They sold it and they moved out to Lancaster, Palmdale. And I was like, what in the world would you do that for? Oh, I could buy me a 5-bedroom house and this, that, and the other thing. Lancaster, okay. You're by, let me understand. Beach, desert.
Right.
And instead of selling it, rent it out. Well, I don't want to be bothered with a renter.
Oh, come on. Sorry.
People,
I had a long talk with Stanley Mitchell about that as they were coming through their very last one, and it was just a brutal battle that he was going through, because again, when you have siblings, everybody wants their fair share of what? At any rate,
what did you do to get it?
Yeah, what did you didn't earn it. So aside from that,
Did you make an investment? That's the thing about it, you see. And that's the whole thing about society now, is we just want what we want, but you didn't do anything to get it. And ill-gotten gains are not going to last. You get that little money, and before you know it, it's nothing, and you're back right where you started from. You might have a lot of things, but it's not anything substantial where you can say you could pass it down to somebody. Don't nobody want your used clothes no more,
Right.
okay? I mean, even though it's in style secondhand store, but it ain't like it was in style when I was growing up. Most people want, red bottom shoes. And I looked at that, I said, how much did you pay for those shoes? Oh, $500. I wouldn't even be able to walk in those shoes. No.
I sell those. So since we're doing it's almost a time capsule of sorts, and we will let you go. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
You mentioned a couple of things, and we're creating kind of a timeline that we're working along, a loose timeline. And so I would ask if you remember around when it was that families kind of started moving out to Lancaster, or the period
yeah.
of time kind of when that was going on.
I seen the property start changing in the late 90s, early 2000s, really, because at that time most of the parents were passing away. And when my mother passed away, I don't know if you know Miss Dabbs. Do you know Miss Dabbs? She owned maybe 10 or 15 properties in Venice. And when I would walk down to the clinic and I would talk to her, she would say, you know now, Mona, don't let nobody tell you that you can't keep that property over there and you could do it. Whatever you need to do, if you need advice, come and let me know. Because then my mother had passed away then. And she said, because I'm going to tell you, if you can hold on to this property, it's going to be worth $1 million someday.
Mm.
And I'd be like, okay, someday. Do I have enough time for it to be someday? How come it can't be today? She goes, nothing comes overnight. You gotta work for it, work for it, work for it. And I used to say, okay, Mr. Habs, okay, I won't. But, I think she was a good example for me to persevere and just to keep moving forward, because those little tidbits, because like she was saying, when I came here, I didn't have anything, and look, I bought this, and then we took that, and then we bought that, and that's how it's supposed to be. But I don't know, we just need to learn how to share and truly, truly love one another. My vision for the last 4 years is just to walk in love. Now, sometimes it's hard to love people, but that doesn't mean that they are unlovable. Now, I don't have to like you, but I can still love you because it benefits me. It helps me. So I'm doing it, and I'm just trying to encourage other people. Don't be complaining. Don't be a naysayer. Don't say they don't deserve it, or how come they got it and I didn't get it. Well, okay. Instead of asking that question, if somebody has something, can you mentor me and show me how to go about doing this? Instead of being a hater.
That I'm a hater. And then you mentioned and I don't recall, I remember being around there because our property was down there. I certainly remember losing house, which was just kind of like, well, that's the end of everything. That really did feel like, not the last thing, but one of the giant cakes in the bucket for something that, while it wasn't around when I was growing up, it had been, you and I spoke briefly before about people that came there and became part of the community and neighbors and made their business, in this instance, part of the community in a neighborhood spot. Didn't matter which part of the neighborhood you were from. You were welcome at Hal's. Hal knew me by face. I don't think he ever knew my name, but he would not say hello to me anytime I came in. That was pretty often.
I know.
And it would be, anyone from me to some famous artist. Do you happen to recall when that big Abbott Kinney kind of thing? What year was that?
I'm telling you, anything was in the late 90s into the early 2000s.
Right.
And I remember how, it was the As Is, and then they had one called Come Back In or something. Yeah. And, people would go there and really, it wasn't bad then, but once it started getting into the gang and the shootings, and then that's when the property values really went down. And you could have bought something for nothing if you can survive hell, you know what I'm saying, then you had something on the other side of it. But after, in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000 is when Abbott Kinney started getting foo-foo, and, you go down there and they want $20 for a T-shirt or $50 for a pair of socks. I'm like, do you know what community you're in? People are not going to buy that stuff. But it brings in a lot of people outside the community. But if you go right past Electric, it's pretty much the same, really. And there was gas stations there. There was a gas station right there on 6th and I think it was on Broadway and 5th Avenue or something. They had a gas station. Then they had the little mom and pop stores, and of course Pioneer Bakery. Yeah. Now, when Pioneer Bakery closed down, and then when they also got rid of that Edgemark, Rockview Dairy, well, then I knew things were going to be changing then, because Pioneer Bakery, that was a stable then. So once they start doing those kind of changes, and I would say, you know what, Mom, now I see what you were talking about. Because you never think that your neighborhood is going to stay bad. Get better. You just think it's going to stay bad. It's the same like they do in Boyle Heights now. Okay, Boyle Heights used to be a bad neighborhood, but once they fixed up that L.A. River, oh my God, you can't buy anything in East L.A. now that's not under $500,000. When barely, back in the 90s, if you could sell your stuff for $125,000 and you thought you had made a killing. But that's what capacity is doing to our neighborhoods. It's moving us out of the city, now moving you into Palmdale, Lancaster, into the desert. Because anytime you go somewhere, oh, I got a house in Lancaster, and I'll be like,
Why?
I'd rather have me a one-bedroom shack someplace in the city and fix it up. You know, just let the shack sit there for a minute until I could get my resources together. But you see, we look at everything as though the end of the vision. You see, life is starting at the beginning of the vision. I see a shack now, but golly, if the Lord keep blessing me, maybe 5 or 10 years, I could have me a beautiful house sitting here. It's not going to happen overnight. But you have to sacrifice time for something, and what else do you really have?
Mm-hmm.
So buy you a little shack somewhere, and then just sit there and be like, look at my little shack. Don't that look good? Well, sorry, no, I ain't got no running water, but you know, there's the bathroom out in the back, whatever.
Right.
Hey, it's good enough for me. If you don't like it, don't come visit. Because I have a vision of how I see it in the future, but we get so stuck on what's going on now. But like you're saying, back in the 80s, it was very interesting living in Venice, because then you see the demise of it. Once the drug dealing came in, it just, you know, and that's in every neighborhood, right? Once crack came available, it destroyed the projects. It destroyed Venice. It destroyed South Central LA. Only thing it didn't truly destroy was Santa Monica. Why? Because they had a white population. But any little segment that was a place for people of color, it was wiped out. And that's why now it's very difficult to try to recuperate that. But I have hope for the young people, that they see that whatever you have, you're going to have to earn it. And when you get it, hold on to it. Don't just throw it away, say, oh, I'll get it again.
Gotta get those houses back. We must thank you so much for sitting with us and sharing with us. And I have to ask, and this doesn't have to be on the recording, we may have to call you for some follow-ups.
No problem.
We don't know. We're going to get together with ourselves and whatever, and that could probably just be on a Zoom call or whatever. We'll figure out how to record that, or if you have time, we can come to wherever is, you know, good for you if we do need to do a follow-up. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate
I'll
it.
do anything for my TK.
So there you go. All right.
Yeah.
Nice
That's
to
what
meet
family's
you.
for, right?
Right? Nice to meet you as
She
well,
calls
too.
me, I'm there.
Mona,
Folks.
you're incredible. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome,
Thank you.
TK. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I can't wait to get my hugs.
I know.
When hugs come back in
Oh,
season.
hey!
Mona's got the best hugs.
When it-
She
After
really
one
does.
year,
No,
after
this
1 year,
No,
if everybody